from the Ticats Audio Network, this is the CFL This Week with Bubba O'Neil.
The time for sudden death football has arrived, so who are your conference semifinal winners? The same three teams that missed the playoffs last year have done so again. Does the CFL have a problem here? Brady Oliveira is the Bombers' MOP. Has he restored the importance of the running back? And regardless of record for your playoff contenders, what's your dream Grey Cup matchup? This is the CFL This Week on the Ticats Audio Network. I'm your host, Bubba O'Neil. Three down football fans, you've landed on the top CFL podcast where the very best analysts, columnists, and broadcasters do say what's on their mind. This week, although he's the best in the business at certainly what he does at the TSN network, I kind of often wonder what he'd be like running a football franchise one day. Duane Ford, great to have you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, you know what? He's the man under center for Football Canada, and well done on getting flag football into the Olympics. Appreciate you, Jim Mullin.
Hey, Bubba. Hey, guys.
And with all due respect to the man that's currently in place, he will always be the voice of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, Bob Irving. It's a pleasure to have you with us here.
Well, thanks for asking me, Bubba. I'm happy to be with you guys.
Right on. Let's do this, guys. Bombers name Brady Oliveira as their most outstanding player over Zach Collaros, ending his reign as the top dog in the CFL after a 2-year reign. Surprised? And is Chad Kelly his biggest threat to win league honors, Mr. Irving?
Well, I wasn't surprised because I'm fairly close to the scene here still, and I knew that it was going to come down to, the last minute to decide whether or not the voters picked Oliveira or Collaros as the Bombers' most outstanding player. I've said all along, if I had a vote, I'd have voted for Collaros, who put up great numbers and essentially missed 3 full games. He sat out 2, and 1 he played less than a quarter. So 30-some touchdown passes, he probably would have thrown for 5,000 yards if he'd played all those games. Now, having said that, Brady Oliveira had a sensational season. And I know the vote, there's 5 people who vote. I'm not one of them anymore, but the vote was 3-2. I know that in Oliveira's favor. So there wasn't any controversy here, but it was a lively debate. Now, whether Brady can come out of the West, I don't know. I would think he is the biggest threat to Chad Kelly if he does come out of the West. You can't overlook what Brady's done. 1,500 yards rushing, almost 500 receiving. He's assignment sound most of the time, which is one of the great strengths that Andrew Harris had when he was the Bombers' tailback. And Brady, I think, not to eat up too much time here, but I think he really improved as a runner. Duane, he approached the line of scrimmage patiently the way Andrew used to do. He picked his holes. He made some moves that we hadn't seen last year. So I think his advancement as a running back really took a big step forward this year. He was sensational.
Well, Duane, I'll throw it right to you because you have to be the happiest man in the house here. Your position well represented here for the first time, it seems like, in some time.
Well, I'm happy and I'm torn, and I'll take this in a slightly different direction. To answer the first part of the question, I will say I'm not surprised. Obviously, Brady Oliveira, based on his season, you heard the statistics from Bob, a very worthy candidate for most outstanding player. But where I'm going with this, and anybody who knows me can probably guess where I'm going with this, the award system is completely flawed, right? Where we can only have one nominee from each team, and going through the division process and so on. I just don't think it's the best way to create storylines. I don't think it's the best way to drive interest. We may have a case where Brady Oliveira and Zach Collaros are the 2 best candidates for the award in the league, but yet only one of them can even be the team nominee. I think it's flawed. So I think there are other fixes that need to be made that are long overdue, and that's one of them. But in terms of the surprise, not surprised, disappointed that everybody who is a worthy candidate can't necessarily even be a nominee or a finalist for the award.
Jimmy, your thoughts?
Well, the one thing that I'm getting a chuckle out of, since I haven't had a vote in quite some time, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the voters do their pretzel logic on this, is there's a number of voters that have stepped up and said, yeah, Brady Oliveira is probably the guy out of the West but Matthew Betts is my outstanding Canadian. How do you square that off? Like, how do you complete that logic if this guy over here is the most outstanding player, but the most outstanding Canadian is coming from the defensive side of the ball? I want to see how that plays out.
That's interesting. And you mean, first of all, just to stick with you, Jim, on that, the fact, I mean, is it fair to say that with this award, defensive players just don't get any respect?
Only Solomon Elimimian is the, I think, was the MOP, if you guys want to correct me on that.
No, you're bang on.
In the entire time of this award. So, and that was at a time when defenses really took over in the Canadian Football League. So, yeah, I'd have to confirm that defensive players rarely get a look at this. It's a de facto offensive award.
And
well,
Bob,
here's the other thing, Bob, if I might weigh in.
Go wild, go wild.
If you remove any bias, how do you choose between Brady Oliveira and Matthew Betts, the seasons they had? You know, you lean one way or the other, depending, I guess, on how you see the world. But that's almost impossible choice. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, the thing we talk about is the fact that it's not just that they both had great seasons; they both had historic seasons for all intents and purposes. And you know, the positive in this is, of course, the trend that we see in terms of the improvement in Canadian talent year over year, decade over decade. It's absolutely phenomenal. But this goes back to exactly the point that I'm making, right? Is would it not be a better storyline if the most outstanding Canadian vote for the league came down to Brady Oliveira versus Matthew Betts? And it won't. You know, like the award is basically going to be decided when the division nominees are decided. And the league is missing a massive opportunity by the archaic way that they do their awards voting.
Well, Duane, let me stick with you on this.
Don't move to a fan vote. Don't move to a fan vote.
No, please don't do that.
No. But Duane, but how do you fix this? Okay, I mean, you probably know way more than I do, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners or viewers right now on this podcast are saying, well, how do you fix it?
Yeah, I mean, the fix to me, my suggestion has always been that for each of the awards, that there should be 5 nominees league-wide, regardless of team, regardless of, you know, position, national, whatever. For each of the awards, you have 5 league nominees. If it's 5 guys from the same team, as somebody goes 18-0, so be it. That would be a fantastic storyline. You know, and you go from those 5, let's narrow it down to 3 finalists. Again, no limitations, no restrictions in terms of having multiple guys from the same team and whatever. In terms of the voting, you know, I will also say, quite frankly, that I think probably at the team level, if you're going to continue to do it this way, more people need to be involved in the vote at the team level. Probably fewer people need to be involved in the vote at the league level. That's just my opinion. But the fact is, in terms of the fix for this problem, the fix is in terms of the basic process. I just think doing team nominees, like let's look at rookie for an example. How many times over the years do you have someone as their team nominee, and it's a guy who's played like 6 games and made a dozen special teams tackles because it's a veteran team and he's the only rookie, and yet he kind of gets the same accolade as a guy who has gone out and put up 1,000 yards rushing or receiving, but you know, doesn't get his division nominee, doesn't become a finalist for the award because somebody else put up 1,100 yards rushing. And yeah, I want to see the best people up for the awards. I want to see the best 2 or 3 guys as the finalists for the awards. That's what's going to create drama. That's what's going to create storylines, period. And it's a league this small. I think it's just too often that the awards are decided by who gets chosen for a given team or who gets chosen from a given division.
Yeah, Duane, your arguments make nothing but sense. But now, what do you think the odds are of the league going along with that? Because then you remove what they've always stuck to, is that East-West thing, and that's what comes into play here to a large degree.
Yeah, that's outdated in my opinion too. So I mean, you've been around a long time. All of you guys have to know that the likelihood of change. That's an uphill battle, right? And that's in sports in general. That's not a CFL thing, but we all know in this league, the league's both its greatest asset and its biggest weakness, quite frankly, are its history, right? This desire to cling to history and the way that we do things this way because this is how we've always done them. Well, how about progress? How about when we know better, we do better?
Let's go once around on this quickly. Jim, is Chad Kelly the shoe-in to win this award?
100%. In my mind, 100%. Chad Kelly, and there's been an effort behind this to make him the face of the league, to try to help sell football in Eastern Canada. And I think that when you take a look at the record of the Toronto Argonauts, even though the Toronto Argonauts are much more than Chad Kelly, at least for what he represents right now in the Canadian Football League, is an avatar. And for that, he will end up being the MOP.
Bob?
Well, I don't think he's a slam dunk, and I don't think he should be. Everything Jim said is true, and I think the league has tried very hard to promote him as the face of the Argos for sure, and a prominent figure across the league. And he did lead a team to 16-2. The Bombers, were 14-4. So their most outstanding player, I think, deserves some fair consideration here. They were only a couple of games behind the Argos in terms of the record, but my guess is Kelly will win it. I don't think he should be a slam dunk, though. I think whoever comes out of the West should get very strong consideration.
Duane, you've seen him at the closest range out of every one of us. Your thoughts?
Yeah, my feeling is very much like Bob's, that I absolutely do not think he should be a slam dunk. I think Chad Kelly has been terrific. To Jim's point, I think not only has there been an effort, but I think Chad Kelly has been a fantastic addition to the Canadian Football League. I think he's been a great story in terms of marketability, so many things. Let's talk about the record. And, as Bob says, the Bombers are 14-4, not bad. Toronto, it's going to sound like I'm picking on the league. I'll apologize to the folks at league office right now. But how the defending Grey Cup champions ended up with the easiest schedule in the Canadian Football League. They only faced Winnipeg once. They only faced BC once, the two top teams in the West. And based on Winnipeg alone, right, if you're kind of doing strength of schedule, logically, if there's a team in the West you're going to face twice, for Toronto, it should have been Winnipeg. They only faced each of those teams once. I think working against Chad Kelly a little bit, I think you also have to consider the fact that the Argos' success, Chad played very, very well. His numbers tell you that. But the Argos, en route to that 16-2 record, won a lot of games when the offense wasn't necessarily rolling, whether it was a Javon Leake kick return that got them going, whether it was a defensive return. Like, this was very much a team record. Now, we all look at quarterbacks and talk about the quarterback's wins and losses, but there are a lot of team wins and losses there. So I don't want to take anything away from Chad Kelly as an MOP candidate. He should be a finalist. He should absolutely be one of the guys we've been talking about. He's been terrific and has been an absolute blast to watch, but by no means a shoe-in, given whether it's Vernon Adams or Brady Oliveira, who would seem to be the most likely candidates coming out of the West.
Guys, this is, you know what this is right now? This is the Showtime Lakers with their first championship, when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar should have been the MVP and was voted the MVP, and David Stern turns to Magic Johnson and says, "You're the face of the league. We're presenting it to you," right? This is Chad Kelly as the avatar of the league. Like, your arguments are totally solid about the season that the Toronto Argonauts had with the 16-2 season. But at the same time, there's a lot of marketing and a lot of muscle that's gone behind Chad, and that's why I think he's a slam dunk. It's on the marketing side as much as anything else.
Yeah, except, Jim, the voters, there's 5 voters in each city. And, I don't think a lot of those voters will necessarily follow the league marketing lead in terms of how they vote. At least I would hope they wouldn't. They shouldn't use that as a criteria. And I don't want to take anything away from Kelly either, but what Duane said, I think, is pretty accurate. There were games when the Toronto offense didn't look very good. And I think you could say that about all teams, of course. And whenever Kelly wasn't looking very good, he would then probably throw a deep pass for a touchdown. Then he would look better all of a sudden. So he always had a way to sort of, if he was having an average game, to make something, very positive out of it. And again, I'm not picking on him at all. He's been fantastic, and he's what the Argos needed. to gain more relevance in that Toronto market. There's no doubt about that at all. So, yeah, I'm curious to see how it all plays out.
Fellas, the same 3 teams that missed the playoffs last year missed the playoffs again this year. I'll ask you this, Duane. Which of these non-playoff teams is the closest to resurrecting themselves and getting themselves back in contention in 2024?
Yeah, this is a tough one. You put me on the spot, but I'll tell you what my answer for this one is going to be the Edmonton Elks for a couple of reasons. I think when you look at the teams that missed the playoffs this year, I think that Trevor Harris coming back from injury aside, I think the Elks have the most certainty at quarterback with Trey Ford. And you look at what they did once he took over at quarterback, look at what their record was. They had the best record of those teams coming down the stretch, very competitive. I think beyond that, seeing a little bit of a shift in the league this year between maybe a little more opportunity to move up in the standings in the West than there was in the East, the way that things went. So maybe a tougher road for an Ottawa, for example. And obviously Ottawa, a lot of uncertainty as to exactly what's going to happen at quarterback there. I enjoyed Dustin Crum. I think that there is something there with the young guys they've got and the possibility of Jeremiah Masoli coming back, but a lot of uncertainty. The other thing I'll say about Edmonton is that for an organization that, would it be fair to say that they have been in a little bit of disarray for the last few years from top to bottom? I think that Rick Lillesheur stepping back in there and providing stability, not that he's going to continue on as president, but I think will ensure that whoever comes in will provide some stability within that organization. I think it provides a better working environment for a guy who I think is very intelligent, very creative as a head coach and general manager, and Chris Jones. Making a short answer long, I think Edmonton is the closest of the 3.
Jim?
I'll take Duane's point about Rick Lillesheur and the stability that he brings to that organization. We got to see it up close here in BC during the transition between the Braley estate and Amar Doman coming on as owner of the Lions. And he is a quiet, unheralded leader behind the scenes in terms of providing stability. And Edmonton is his hometown. He's well networked there, and if there's one thing that organization needs right now is to tie back into some networks in the community. So that stability at the top should reflect the continuity that they have in coaching and in the front office with an individual like G. Roy Simon, and it goes right down to the team. And Duane talked about Trey Ford, and I couldn't agree more. Every time Trey Ford went on the field, he was the best athlete on the field. And that turns games around. I think the team that's furthest away, obviously, is Ottawa. And, whether the league chooses to move to a more balanced schedule next year, it could make it even tougher for them. I'm not sure what the league has in terms of a schedule, but even when you take a look at Montreal, they put their record together winning against teams that were worse than them and losing against teams that were better than them, so like straight down the middle. We need more balance in the schedule. But if that comes to pass, things will get even tougher for Ottawa to dig out of the hole that they're in right now. The other question that I have is, if we have these 3 teams stuck in this pattern, and as much as it looks like Chris Jones is working his way out of a ditch right now, is this operations cap that's applied to coaches and managers really holding these bad teams in place in terms of not being able to make a change when they need to make a change? I'm not sure if I have the answer to that. I mean, what Chris Jones has worked through in Edmonton has shown that maybe sticking with the plan is a positive thing, but certainly being able to change direction if you're a team is not something that's open right now to CFL teams under this operations cap.
Well, I would say, yeah, if Trey Ford can become the complete quarterback that we'd all like to see him become and improve his passing skills, then it's Edmonton for me. They've got more continuity. I think they've got fewer free agents than any other team in the league this offseason. So they're going to come back with a lot of the same personnel, and they'll play together now for a year. Ford's a sensational athlete for sure. I'd like to know who the head coach in Saskatchewan is going to be, because I think if Trevor Harris comes back, and he was pretty good before he got hurt, and he's going to be 38 years old, but if he comes back, then they got stability at quarterback, and I know that's a huge question mark. And then, again, depending on who their head coach is, I think the Riders have a chance. Remember, they were 6-5 at one point this year, and they beat the Blue Bombers. And, they looked like a team that could maybe make some noise, and then they just fell apart. So I don't think they're far away, but I think Edmonton is pretty close too. Ottawa, gosh, I would just wish them luck, okay?
Duane, Bob brings up an interesting point. You're talking about this Rough Riders team that look good. Look what they did on Labor Day, right? Look what they did to a real good Bombers team on Labor Day. And I don't think that was a fluke. They played really, really well. And in back-to-back years, I don't know if in all your years of watching, have you seen a team lose 7 in a row in back-to-back years?
Yeah, this is the thing. One of our colleagues, Dave Naylor, brought up the point a little while ago to me. He said, yeah, in the last 2 years, after Labor Day, they are 0 for 2 years. And it's remarkable. So, yeah, we say, look at what they did to Winnipeg on Labor Day. Well, I have to look back through a lot of bad stuff to find my way to Labor Day. And so it's, it's hard to imagine, right? As I thought about this question, one of my thoughts was we talk all the time about the Saskatchewan Roughrider fans as being the most loyal fans in the CFL. And I'm not convinced that they are the most loyal fans in the CFL. I'm convinced that they might be the most emotionally invested fans in the CFL, for better or worse, right? When things are going great, absolutely. The love that gets poured behind that team is phenomenal. But we saw as they struggled down the stretch this season, you had a very, very vocal and unhappy fan base that, that can kind of maybe contribute to momentum going in one direction or another with that team. But yeah, for them, Trevor, to Bob's point, would be a big re-add for them. Obviously, I think Trevor's still got some game left. It sounded like his rehab was actually going pretty well down the stretch of the season. He came up to the booth to visit us when they were in Ottawa. But as well, yeah, not knowing exactly what's happening with the head coaching situation there, it's tough to know exactly where they're going to make a projection on that team.
And maybe the new head coach in Saskatchewan doesn't want Trevor Harris, right? Maybe he wants to go with Donegal and some young guys. So there's so many unknowns around them.
When Duane talks about making emotional investments into the team, I'm not sure if you guys have had the opportunity to listen to the Saskatchewan Roughriders post-game shows on radio.
Yes.
They are pure entertainment.
Well, we had Daniela Ponticelli here on this show a couple of weeks ago, and she talked about two, and I can't remember who they had lost to. I think it was the Hamilton loss. The Hamilton loss, which, for many reasons may have been their low point after all the buildup that they had to that game. They had two callers in tears, crying on air about their Rough Riders and their performance and how disappointed they were. So you talk about fan investment. I can't remember the last time I've seen anyone crying over, at least on air, about a football team. So yeah, that's incredible what's going on there. So let's wish those three teams good luck, because I'd like to see a little more balance in the league, obviously.
Yeah.
You know what? Of the 6 teams in the mix right now, I'd like all 3 of you guys right now. And it doesn't matter. Please don't tell me what you think is going to happen. Invent, of the 6 teams that are in the playoffs right now, Jim, your dream Grey Cup matchup of the teams that are in there right now.
Well, I might be on remote football island right now, but down deep, I'm a big city guy, so I'm hoping for a BC-Toronto final. And one of the reasons why I'm hoping for a BC-Toronto final is history, and another is the 2 quarterbacks. The 2 quarterbacks, when they're at the top of their game, can be 2 of the most exciting players in the Canadian Football League. The problem with Vernon Adams Jr., and I think everybody on this call knows this there's good Vernon and there is bad Vernon. And he can show up on a drive, he can show up in a quarter, he can show up in a half. And when he's on and he's got his game together in terms of entertainment, you're not going to get much better in this league. And then if you look at the history between BC and Toronto in the final, there was the Dave Casey game back in 2004 that was full of intrigue. There was the first game played in the Dome, the 18-17 game back in 1983. There's a good history between these two teams, and I'd like to see two of Canada's biggest markets playing to maybe give it a boost in terms of ratings at the end of the day, because at the end of the day, there's a business portion of this as well. So I'm all for a BC Toronto final, and maybe some of those Toronto fans can find their way down to Hamilton to watch a Grey Cup game.
Duane, who do you like here?
Yeah, this is another one of those that has me torn, because I think any sort of permutation combination of two teams that you could come up with, I think that there are some terrific storylines there, whether it's connections between coaches, players, whatever the case may be. For me, it probably comes down to, I like for the regular season to mean something. So I like for the two best to see the two best regular season teams be successful in the playoffs. Love the drama of one-game playoffs where anything can happen, but I don't love seeing, as we have seen sometimes over the years, sub-500 teams winning Grey Cups. And so in order for the regular season to mean something, that would mean a Winnipeg-Toronto Grey Cup being played in Hamilton. But to see Winnipeg and Hamilton meet for a third time, and to meet again in Hamilton, somewhat outside of pandemic conditions, I mean, there's something to that one too. But bottom line, if I can only pick one, I'm going to pick the two best regular season teams would be my dream matchup.
And before, Bob, you get into that, can I tell you that and I don't really have a vote here. No one cares what I think. But here's why I love the Ticats and the Bombers. Back-to-back years, the Bombers have come into Hamilton and got whacked, right? And then you think about that first game of the year in Winnipeg, where I believe Winnipeg had like a 28-point or 24-point lead, and then Hamilton somehow got back into the game, and it was a one-score game at the end at IG Field, and the crazy things happened, punt blocks. I feel like these teams, and then of course the Ackland dropped pass. It was at 2021. There's something about the Bombers and the Ticats to me that are always really, really interesting, Bob.
Yeah, I understand that. I have to tell you, though, as a guy who's in Winnipeg, there is an appetite here for a Winnipeg-Toronto Grey Cup. And I know there's some Bomber fatigue. They've been there the last 3 years. And fans do get tired, across the country do get tired of seeing the same team all the time. I get that because I've seen it over the years. But there's a feeling among the fandom here that they'd love to see the Bombers and Argos play, because they want to see Winnipeg, first of all, get revenge from last year, losing the game to the Argos, and maybe cut the Argos down to size a little bit. The Argos have got a pretty good strut going on right now at 16-2, and I think we can all see that. This isn't me talking. I'm talking on behalf of the fans. This is what the fans would like to see. And I'm with Duane, too, in best on best. You got a 14-4 against a 16-2 team. Come on, what's any better than that in terms of a matchup? So that's the game I'd like to see, simply because I think those are the two best teams in the league.
Well, the other thing that I'm going to tack onto that with Bob is the fact that just because of the way things played out with Toronto clinching so early, we kind of got robbed of an opportunity to see that rematch, right? Like, the season should have opened with those two teams playing each other. Grey Cup rematch in week 1 is what I would have liked to have seen. But the fact that they only had one meeting, and it was after the Argos clinch. So that was a game where Chad Kelly didn't see the field at all. It wasn't best on best. It wasn't the matchup that we wanted. And so, I kind of feel like I agreed with the decision to sit Chad Kelly out in that game. But somebody out there in the world of football karma, I think, owes us that matchup.
Duane, you're close to the TSN thing and kind of understand the league and how it runs probably a little bit better than most. Can you explain to me why, and we see this in the NFL and it draws huge ratings, and not to say that it has to be the NFL, why there wasn't a Grey Cup rematch right out of the box, like first game, Friday Night Football. I'm sure that, and then as you said, only one meeting between the two Grey Cup teams. To me, that seems like, and I'm no smart guy, but it seems pretty obvious that TSN as a network would want to sell that matchup. Why is there something? And then you get Ticats and Argonauts 4 times, which, you know what? Wonderful rivalry, but 4 times in a 9-team league seems like a bit much.
Yeah, and I, the thing I would say from a TSN point of view, obviously some things are well above my pay grade, whether they should be or not, but they are. But I would say that in terms of TSN's input on the schedule, our input on the schedule basically has to do with when games are played more than, like, we really have no input in terms of what the matchups are. Who plays who in those time slots is not necessarily the network's doing. That's the league, and I think that, this is kind of our opportunity to say, in terms of traditions that should be established and stuck to, a Grey Cup rematch in week 1 should be a bit of a given. And as I said before, like, one of the things I would like to see in scheduling is, if we're going to stay with kind of division-based scheduling, where you don't necessarily play everybody in the other division twice, is there has to be a strength of schedule element to it. So the teams that were, absolutely, if you're a team that finishes first in your division, one of the teams from the other division that you should see twice next year should certainly be the team that finished first over there. If you finished last in your division in 2023, in 2024, you should be seeing the last place team from the other division twice in 2024. That just to me is kind of a basic element of unbalanced scheduling.
Yeah. Bubba, let me just throw in one more item on this. And, we hear all the time, scheduling is complicated. Yeah, it is, stadium availability and all that stuff. But scheduling is also marketing, right? So Duane and I had this discussion a few weeks ago in Winnipeg. The first thing the league needs to do when it puts together the 24 schedule is match up the Grey Cup finals in the first game of the year, and then let everything else fall into place and make sure that they play twice. And if you're going to tell me that is too difficult to do, then I'm having a problem with that. Just make it a priority. Make it a priority to schedule certain teams and at certain times of the league and build everything else around it.
So quick point here. One of the most compelling Grey Cups that we've seen in the last 25 years. 2009, 13th man, right?
Yeah.
What was the first game of the 2010 season?
Oh, the
Montreal,
double over.
Saskatchewan. That game was legendary.
Yeah,
that was probably the best season opener I've seen in my 40-plus or 50-plus years of watching Canadian football.
Is that the S.J. Green catch in the back of the end zone? Yeah.
It was electric, that game.
Yeah, it was wild.
Like, there's your lesson. If you've experienced the lesson, why haven't we moved on year by year by year since then?
Yep.
In the years after that, making this automatic.
Sometimes complicated.
It's just a head scratcher.
Maybe we should run the league, guys. All right, guys, let's get into the playoff matchups that
are available, Bubba.
We could use your 50 years of experience there, sir. Your East semifinal winner is, and why, Mr. Bob Irving?
Well, I think Hamilton's got a shot for sure, but you have to pick Montreal. I'm not sure what Hamilton's going to do at quarterback. They got 3 choices. If it was me, I'd start Bo and let him go and see what happens. Montreal's they've won 5 in a row, so they've got momentum. They're playing at home. What you're going to get from the Alouettes and Cody Fajardo, it's not going to be anything spectacular or sensational, but it'll be fairly solid. Their defense has really impressed me a lot this year, Montreal. So I got to go with Montreal simply because their record's better. They've won 5 in a row. They're playing at home.
Duane?
Bubba, I hate predictions. I absolutely hate predictions. I'll
be back. You got to plug my computer. Carry on.
I will say to Bob's point, Montreal's momentum is compelling. We talk all the time about playing well at the right time, getting hot at the right time. We've seen it so many times in this league. And, I mean, for that reason, I think you can make a case for both of these teams. And I don't want to sound like too much of a fence sitter, but I genuinely don't like making predictions, especially on a game that I'm calling, because too many
Sorry.
people think that a prediction is what you want to have happen.
Right.
What I want to have happen is for it to be a great game that comes down to a close finish. That's genuinely all I care about. I think Montreal has to be the favorite going into this one. You look at their record, as Jim said earlier, they have beaten teams that they've had a better record than. They've lost to teams they've had a worse record than. Well, they have a better record than Hamilton. They've been hot down the stretch. I think those things work in Montreal's favor.
Jim, there's a lot of intrigue, at least in these parts, right? Because, Bo Levi Mitchell, started in this sort of meaningless game and only played a quarter. And in the two real games that Montreal defeated the Ticats, they were dealing with a backup quarterback. So the belief around these parts is he's healthy, he's ready to go. And they've sort of ramped him up getting ready for this game, which, I have to believe gives them the best chance. Though Matthew Schultz took the week off last week, he's been solid when used this year. Your thoughts on this matchup?
First of all, you start Bo Levi Mitchell. You want that level of experience at quarterback. I was in Ottawa the night that Bo Levi hurt his ankle, and I had seats right above the players' entrance. And I thought I had seen the last of Bo Levi Mitchell at that moment. He wasn't even being carted off. They didn't have a cart there. They had two players hauling him off, and we're about 20 rows back, and you could hear his agony from 20 rows up. It was a little too much for me to watch, actually. I had to get up and leave, and it was right at the end of the game, but I had to get up and leave. And I thought, this is no way for a legend in this league to go out, right? This is an opportunity for Bo Levi Mitchell to be Bo Levi Mitchell again, and that's why I don't bet on CFL games, because there's too many random factors involved in it. That being said, I like the consistency, the momentum in the home field of Montreal. So I'd lean to Montreal in this case, but I wouldn't want to bet against Bo Levi Mitchell in a one-game scenario like this.
I guess we're soon going to find out. Let's go to the West, Bob. And this, I got a lot of intrigue for this game because Calgary showed us a little something with a running attack a couple of weeks ago. Now, I'm sure BC have been looking at a lot of film over the last couple of weeks. Can Calgary duplicate what they did in the Dome a couple of weeks ago?
I don't think so. BC they're not a very good defense against the run. So that's going to be a problem for them. And they're going to have to, I think, really emphasize that, because Calgary can run the football and they've got more than one person to do it. 3 weeks ago, Calgary went in there and looked so good beating BC. I said to myself, there's the Stampeder team that I thought we might see more of this year. But then last week when they played their final game against Winnipeg and played most of their starters, I know Begelton didn't play and one or two others, they looked awful. They looked disinterested. And maybe they were, because they knew that the game that mattered was the game in Vancouver next week. But I don't think the Lions can play that poorly at home again. I really don't, against Calgary. I'll be very surprised if Calgary wins that game. I really will. I think BC will come out all guns blazing. Vernon Adams will be good, and he'll need to be. But no, I think BC is going to win that game.
Duane, I won't put it in because you don't like to make predictions. I'll put it in this way. No, and I respect that, because you are on the network and we don't want people thinking the wrong thing. What does Calgary have to do to win this game? And then what does the Lions have to do to win the game?
Yeah, I think that for BC to win, I think BC has to play like BC. Yes, my disdain for predictions put aside, BC should be the favorite going into this game, as they will be. They're the better football team, plain and simple. I think when you look back to that game a couple weeks ago where Calgary looked so good, one of the things I think you have to consider is that Calgary had to do everything they could do to win that game. Whereas I think BC went into that game recognizing that odds were that there was a pretty reasonable chance that they were going to have the same matchup in a couple weeks. And you look at those kind of games, like take the Hamilton-Montreal game last week. They know they're playing each other in the playoffs in a week. Both teams are going to be limited in what they show. That's not the game where you're going to pull out new wrinkles or do whatever you have to do to win. Calgary in that game against BC, Calgary had to pull out whatever they had to pull out to win. BC didn't. I think BC wanted to play a good game. Of course, they wanted to win that game with an outside shot of finishing first in the West still at hand. Could have played Vernon Adams for the whole game, whatever. I think they had other priorities ahead of that slim shot at first place going into that game, whereas Calgary kind of did everything. BC's been more consistent. BC has been better. I think BC is the favorite. They're the obvious favorite based on the standings, based on record, but for the one game, they should still be the favorites.
Jim, clean sweep for the Lions?
Well, I think so, but it comes down to what I said earlier. Are we going to get good Vern or bad Vern, and when are we going to get good Vern and bad Vern in this game? We know that Vernon Adams Jr. is a different individual than the guy that entered this league. We know that he's more dedicated, that he's more focused, that he's more studied. I just hope that focus is consistent throughout the game for the sake of the BC Lions. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be the Lions defense that wins this and the adjustments that they make to shut down some of that Calgary running game. But to the guys' points, yeah, it was kind of like a preseason game for the Lions at the end of the season for them because of the scenario that they faced. And it wasn't that way for the Calgary Stampeders. So, I can't see, I agree with Bob, I can't see the BC Lions coming out and playing the type of game that they played against Calgary previously, just going into this. That being said, I like Montreal because of the momentum that they had. Lions did, with that game, the Lions don't have a whole lot of momentum coming into this. So, once again, a reason why I don't bet on Canadian football games.
Isn't it strange, guys, that all season long the chatter around the league is like, you got to make Jake Maier throw. You got to make. This is a guy that unseated. We just talked about Bo Levi Mitchell. He unseated Bo Levi Mitchell as a starting quarterback because of his throwing ability there, Duane. So what happened this year to Jake Maier? Do you see any difference in his game plan? And we sometimes hear this. Sometimes when a guy comes off the bench, he's really good, but you make him a starter and things change. Is that what's happened to him this year?
No, I don't think that's the case necessarily. I think sometimes that it can be forgotten that Jake Maier is still a young quarterback in the Canadian Football League. And you look historically, everybody's going to have their ups and downs. There have been very few guys on whom it has been a steady upward trajectory or that have sort of started great and always been great. So I think that there are always going to be ups and downs for guys. There have been a lot of changes when you look at some of the staff in Calgary over the course of the last few years that I think are a factor. They had a lot of injuries at receiver this year that drastically changed the look of their team. And, continuity is such a big factor in success. And, we often talk about it from year to year that, keeping a core group together, building on that, building from year to year, how important that is, especially with short training camps and so on. But even within a season, being able to put the same lineup out there week after week makes a big difference. And especially in the early part of the season, they lose Malik Henry, who is a top 3, top 5 receiver in the league a year ago. You had a big load put on Reggie Begelton. He battled injuries a little bit down the stretch. Mark and Michelle came back and was fantastic for them. Mark and Michelle is a guy that Jake Maier had never played with before. And so, just getting on the same page, finding that continuity together, I think that was part of the battle for Jake Maier, whereas Calgary, I would contend, had a lot more consistency in their lineup in previous years than they did this year.
Bob, your thoughts on this?
I don't know what to make of Jake Maier at this point. Everything Duane said, I think has credence. And there's a lot to be said for continuity. When I think Duane was talking about continuity, I'm thinking about here in Winnipeg, Mike O'Shea's had the same coordinators for the last number of years, basically the same coaching staff for the last 5 or 6 years, which in this league is unheard of. And I think that's a very underrated reason why the Bombers have been so consistent. They've had the same quarterback since 2019, the same offensive line basically in the last 4 or 5 years. So the togetherness and the consistency that this franchise and team has had is remarkable, and it's one of the reasons, and of course they have good players, that helps a little bit. It's one of the reasons they've been so successful. And Calgary had a lot of turmoil this year for sure, in terms of their lineup and some changes in the coaching area with Dave Dickinson becoming the GM and the coach. And, but Jake Maier, I watch him play and I think, boy, this guy, he looks really good. But some games I'm not sure he plays really good. So I'd stick with him if I'm Calgary. He's still my guy going forward. But, I don't know if he can. I don't know if Calgary can win that game in BC on the weekend. But I think they got to stick with Jake Maier and, to kind of give him the same group of guys to play with next year and get some consistency going and then see where that takes them.
You started this, Jim, by saying, bad VA, good VA, right? And that's kind of the word about Calgary's quarterback as well, too, after he looked so good last year.
Well, you talk about consistency and support, guys, and the coaching staffs being in place and a system being in place. And I'm gonna close this loop back to the very first subject that we talked about, which was Brady Oliveira, of all things. Because Brady Oliveira doesn't exist in that running back spot. At least I don't believe so. Unless Andrew Harris is there and there's Canadian depth in that spot and there's that support system around him to work him and develop him into that spot so you can move on to the next guy. I'm not sure if Jake Maier necessarily had that sort of support and that sort of conveyor to get him to where he needed to go. And to Duane's point in terms of the change and the injuries and the adjustments he's had to make to the guys that are in his receiving core, and people also don't see the how hard that swan has to paddle when that coach also becomes a general manager. People don't see it. Adding that portfolio on actually does mean that you're doing 2 full-time jobs, regardless of the support that you have in that front office. So with all of those changes that people don't see, it actually affects that type of support that you could give to your key player, your key quarterback in this case, who is essentially flying without a net underneath him now that veteran presence is in another city.
Guys, great conversation and great opinions as always, but I don't get the opportunity to have 3 guys like you guys here. So I gotta do an audible right here. And I discussed this maybe about 6 weeks ago, so I'm coming at you fresh on this one. I think you guys all saw the game. Duane, you were on the call for the Ticats and the Alouettes game. And Jason Moss's second use of this quick kick to get a first down thing. Again, no one cares about my feelings about it. I feel like it's kind of cheating. It's in the rule book. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about. Duane, should this be something the league looks at as a way, like it continued, it got them a first down. And I don't know how you defend it. So your thoughts on this sort of kind of crease in the rule book, I think.
Yeah, it's a play that I don't love, but I appreciate the creativity, the awareness, and quite frankly, for lack of a better word, having the nuts to do it, right? Because, I mean, if that goes off your foot the wrong way at all, I mean, that's immediately a turnover as well. So, I spoke earlier about, my like and dislike for the league doing things a certain way because this is how we've always done it. It's one of the quirks in the league. As I said, I don't love it, but kind of the quirky creativity that it allows for in the world of Canadian football, I'll let this one slide.
Yeah. look, it's fun, right? It's fun to watch that sort of thing. But when you're 2nd and 20 and gain 2 yards and get a first down,
it's wrong. It's all wrong.
It's gimmicky. Like, I laughed at it too, and I, like everybody else, I enjoyed it, but it's gimmicky. I don't like gimmicks. You got to get rid of it. Get it out of here. You shouldn't be 2nd and 20 and get 2 yards and get a first down. There's no way in any football world that should happen.
Well, here I'll say this about the amateur rule book: you have to kick it over you have to kick it beyond where the downs marker is. So if you're 2nd and 20, you catch a pass in the flat, you move it up 2 yards, you got to kick the thing 18 yards if you're going to recover it again. Yeah. That's the amateur rule book. However, I do like the creativity behind it. I believe, though, because you have to give 5 yards for no yards, and if there's an actual receiver on the end of this thing, you're going to have to kick it at least 5 or 10 yards, right? The little dribble kick is, I have to agree, it is somewhat gimmicky. That being said, though, it sure keeps defenses honest in those situations when they're playing the Alouettes. If you're facing a 2nd and 18. No one's sitting back if they know that they've got this in their tool chest, right? The other thing that I think that it opens up is more of a rugby style game if anyone wants to take advantage of that, right? If there's someone out there with a full skill set, the old pass, punt, and kick, there's a different opportunity here to advance the football up the field. And with the width of the field that we have in this league, I'd like to see more experimentation with kicking in the open field than less. So do I agree that the 1 or 2 yard dribble kick is gimmicky? Yeah. Do I want to see something like that out of the game? No, I'd actually like to see it expanded on.
I just want to jump back in for a second regarding Jim's point just about keeping defenses honest. And isn't it fascinating that we talked about these two teams playing each other back to back, just played in a meaningless game, about to play each other in the most meaningful game of their season, and Montreal pulls that play out. Yeah. It'll be fascinating to see if they get in a 2nd and extra long, watch how Hamilton plays them this week, and be ready for Montreal to now try and throw the ball over their heads because they've got to move their corners up because they're afraid of that hitch, pass, and dribble, right? They're not going to, as Jim said, they're not going to play their corners 15 yards off.
Yeah, Jason Moss right now and Danny Machocha are Reg Dunlop in Slapshot. He's screwing with their heads, right? That's what he's doing.
But wouldn't you have
well done in that situation?
But wouldn't you have saved that for the playoff game? That's what I
thought. It's in their head now. They're showing it to them for a reason because they're playing in the playoff game, right? Yeah. You want to force them to do something different. Next time you're 2nd and extra long. You don't want that to be your go-to play 2nd and extra long. You want to open up something else by forcing them to move their DBs up.
Well, one of the great things about our Canadian game are the quirks, right? The single point and all that stuff. So from that perspective, yeah, I love it. It's got some attractiveness, but I just think there's something wrong with being able to get a first down on a play like that when you're 2nd and 50 yards or whatever you are. Anyway, we'll see what the league does with it. It'll be interesting to see what they do with it in the offseason.
Yeah, because they've gone to the well on a cup. I mean, and I'm sure they'll use it again at some point because Jason Moss seems to be the guy. Unless you stop me, I'm going to just keep on doing it. You know, it's funny. My broadcast partner, Andy Fantus, who you guys all know very, very well, he said that he would use that play once every single game until someone stopped me.
Yeah, sure.
It's an interesting.
And there is a risk involved too. You're giving up possession, even if it's temporarily. There is a risk involved in that. Oh, yeah. Right.
You guys have been fabulous. Great CFL talk as we approach the postseason, and I guess it is the time of the year where we're most interested. The numbers are up on television, the interests are up in the stadiums. The drive to the Grey Cup in Hamilton, 110, it's underway already. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Bob, again, you're not actively broadcasting. As you said, you're in retirement and enjoying these games. But I do see you rather active on social media. If people want to contact you and talk a little CFL football, how can they do so?
Well, don't ask me for what my X address is. I don't even know. I'm on Twitter or X now, and I couldn't tell you how you could access me. I have no clue, and that might sound stupid, but that's how technically advanced I am. But it's my outlet now. Twitter or X is my outlet. It's my way to express my opinions, which I still want to do. Mm-hmm. So that's the way I do it. And every now and then I get asked to be on a show like this, and that's always fun to do too. So anyway, you can follow me on Twitter, but I don't know how you'd find me. I have no idea.
You find him on a golf course 40 times a year.
Well, you could type in Duane Ford on the search on X or Twitter, and nothing comes. Or I think something does come up, but I don't think it's you, Duane.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little different than Bob. I have an account, had an account, haven't looked at it since it became X. You guys know social media is a cesspool, man. I got enough other problems.
No, I agree with you totally, Duane. I agree with you totally. But I try to keep it sort of above board.
Oh, you draw heat sometimes, Irving. You do not.
I know I do.
Yeah, but let's be fair. Bob is poking the bear a couple. I've seen him poke the bear on air on Twitter a little bit. So of course it's fun discussion, and it's all football discussion, which we love. Jim, I do know you can be found on social media.
Oh, yeah, I'm swimming in that cesspool. Jim _Mullin TV. And it all ties into some of the stuff we do on our wonderful show on TSN, Crown Gridiron Nation. And we're on Wednesdays and Thursdays on the network, somewhere around the 5-channel universe. Usually we're good for at least once a week a beer and a brew, which means if you go to a restaurant, we'll be up on in the restaurant. So you can catch up on Canadians in college and university football there.
And
Jim,
show for the hardcore Canadian fan.
Thank you very much. You took the words right out of my mouth, and I think you can. It's time to pose you the question right now. I know you're seeing what's going on in the OUA. Is it time that Western's going to get knocked off?
You know what? The thing I will tell you guys very, very honestly, I purple and proud all the time. I support my team, but I actually love how competitive the conference is this year and how many close games Western has played. It's better for OUA football. It's better for U Sports football, the more competitive it is, quite honestly. So, love seeing my guy Michael Faulds at Laurier with their terrific record. That game came right down to the wire against Western. Steve Snyder at Queens, we've got that matchup again. We all know the barn burner those two teams had earlier in the season. Great for university football. So I go Western, but I love seeing the close games.
Well, I think there's another side to this for Western is that, they, in past years, would have teams put away by halftime, right? In a number of games this year, they've either been down at halftime by a score, tied at halftime, or haven't really pulled away. And so I think in some of those years where they've kind of gone to sleep a little bit in some of those games leading into a Yates Cup, where they've been upset. That's not going to happen this time around. I am really looking forward to a rematch between them and Laurier in the Yates Cup. I think that might be the game of the year anywhere in university football. And so one of the great stories for me is Windsor, how they've taken advantage of their recruiting advantages being located so close to Michigan. They brought in a few American kids. They've turned that a program around the Cercelli family has. That's a positive. But Western and Quebec have the tougher road here. So I'm actually thinking that we're going to have a repeat of the 2015 Vanier Cup with UBC taking on Montreal at Queens. That's what I believe. I still can't get over how the mighty Manitoba Bisons got into the Canada West playoffs, though. Bob, you and I were talking about this just before we came on here. Yeah. I have never seen anything like that in my life, where Calgary's up by 20 points. There's I think 9 seconds left on the clock. Manitoba has a timeout remaining. You're on your own 22-yard line. You run a running play. It's a fumble. It's a scoop and score. Manitoba then scores a 2-point conversion. All Calgary had to do was take a knee and then run around because of the point differential, and they would have been in the playoffs. Instead, they give up 8 points and win the game, but miss the playoffs because of the point differential by 1 point. I have never seen anything like this.
I don't think we'll ever see anything like it again. You know, we talk in football about ball security all the time, right? So the one thing, and often when I'm watching games toward the end, I'll say to myself, okay, here's the one thing you can't do on this play.
Yeah.
And the one thing they couldn't do was turn the ball over. That's the one thing Calgary couldn't do. And sure enough, they did. And I don't think, as long as we live, we'll never see an ending with the numerical factors that were involved and how many points you lose by. We'll never see anything like that again.
Yeah. Stunning, absolutely stunning.
And yes, folks, of course, the big Ticats and Alouettes game is going to be where you want to be. You want to be here at the Ticats Audio Network. Pre-game coverage, post-game coverage, halftime, the game. We have it all for you, so we certainly hope that you join us for us. This has been the CFL This Week. We hope you've enjoyed this week's broadcast. We will see you next week. Take care.